Well, back in the middle of last year, we uncovered the blatant criminal infiltration of the union and of building sites the union controlled. And that criminal infiltration and the corruption problems that come with it also infected building companies. There was a significant uproar. Some of the projects involved are taxpayer-funded projects, especially Victoria's Big Build. The federal government intervened, the Albanese government spoke up, the Victorian Premier and other premiers spoke up, and ultimately the union, the CFMEU, was plunged or placed into administration. Its leaders were sacked around the country, new leaders were installed, and the union today operates under the carriage of an administrator, Mark Irving, KC, a senior barrister. While that might sound like a huge amount of sweeping reform, and I must also say laws were promised and things referred to investigative agencies, at the heart of the scandal today is the revelation that the wrongdoing is still going on. There is still organised crime operating with relative impunity, and the administration, while doing its best, is struggling to combat it. And what we've discovered and what we are revealing is that a series of suspect payments have been flowing through front companies to do deals with the union, to cut deals on construction sites, being paid in some cases by state government, Victorian government subcontractors. This money is allegedly ending up with Mick Gatto today. There are payments that have been made very recently, months after the supposed clean-up of the construction sector had begun. As well as being a fixture in the gangland, Mick Gatto has made a business representing building companies seeking to cut deals with the CFMEU. He's done this over many years. That's not new, but what is new and very interesting and extremely damning is that despite all these changes promised by state and federal governments, Mick Gatto and people like him are still going very strong in the construction sector today. And the fact that this is going on raises real questions about whether the changes state and federal governments have endorsed across the construction sector are actually working. It's an issue that flows to the governments which are funding these sites. Taxpayer money is ultimately, perhaps indirectly, but ultimately landing in the pockets of gangland figures, and that shouldn't be happening. The way the corruption system worked, to put it simply, is the CFMEU placed bikies into Victorian government projects. Now, bikies are notorious for a couple of things. The first is violence, and the second is their mistreatment or disregard for the rights of females, of women. Now, combine those two elements on a government worksite, and you're going to have women exposed to awful violence. And that's precisely what happened. The point being, this was utterly foreseeable. And it should never have happened. What has happened? Women have been bashed by health and safety reps from Victorian government big build projects. When they have complained about those assaults, those brutal bashings, one caught on camera, it's the women who've lost their jobs. Again, it points to a system that has allowed violence, that has allowed criminality, that has allowed or empowered bikie gangs to operate at huge cost, not just to taxpayers, but to vulnerable people, to women, to ordinary people working on these sites. And no one really has been held accountable in any meaningful way in terms of the actual violence itself or in terms of the system that permitted it to occur. At the end of the day, the government has spent taxpayer money in a fashion that has enriched organised crime, making the community less safe. And it needs to explain why this has happened, and it needs to hold people to account. We've had multiple media reports over years. We've had 2 royal commissions over 2 decades. We've had the recent huge revelations last year. The CFMEU is placed into administration. There's promises of new laws and police action. And yet the villains in this picture are still operating with impunity. There are still Comanchero bikies cruising around Victoria, standing over businesses on behalf of state government, building industry subcontractors. So where to from here? Well, the government, and especially the Victorian government, needs to act to ensure there is, in the first instance, proper accountability. What does that look like? Is that a commission of inquiry that goes after, forget the union, goes after organised crime? Why don't we have a commission of inquiry looking at organised crime, the involvement of bikies and gangland figures, be it in the union, be it in building companies, large or small, be it on state government projects? Let's make organised crime the target. Why doesn't the state government with the support of the federal government, do that. It would clean up building sites around the nation. But the point being, there's a lot more to be done, and it needs to be done.